Welcome to Season 3, Episode 7, Chronicles of UK Salafism and Insider Perspective. The focus of this particular episode will be the year 2016. I will begin with the first article I wrote that year on the 19th of January, entitled Her Master's Voice, Lazy, Misguided and Reckless, which was in relation to the former Prime Minister David Cameron asserting that learning English was a solution to tackling segregation and the lure of extremism. And I highlighted the fact that this was a non-starter because the poster girls for ISIS at the time were Aqsa Mahmood and Sally Jones, both British and fluent English speakers. International events that month commenced on the 2nd of January when the world witnessed Saudi Arabia executing 47 alleged terrorists, including Shia cleric Nimr al-Nimr. On the 8th of January, El Chapo was finally recaptured after escaping from jail 6 months earlier. And on the 3rd of February, President Barack Obama visited his first US mosque, the Islamic Society of Baltimore in Maryland. And then on the 21st of February, the so-called Islamic State claimed the responsibility for bombing and killing 140 people in the Syrian cities Homs and Damascus. I received information that Jamie Paul and Ramirez would be released from prison on the 17th of March of that year. And on the 20th of March, referring to Barack Obama again, he became the first US president to visit Cuba since 1928 for a 3-day tour. 2 days later, the world witnessed suicide bombings at Brussels Zaventem Airport and Malbeek metro station, in which 28 people were killed and a further 260 injured. ISIS claimed responsibility. I wrote an article on the 25th of March regarding those attacks entitled Brussels Attacks, What's Next? An excerpt from that article went as follows. The 4-month search for Salah Abdeslam centred around Molenbeek district, a poor neighbourhood largely inhabited by second and third generation immigrants, many of them Muslim. It is interesting to observe that despite an extensive search for him and his accomplices, the authorities failed to engage with the local communities among which they resided. There does not appear to be any type of community liaison or relationship between the two entities, typifying yet again the type of hierarchical top-down community-targeted approach towards minorities. This continues to be the default position between statutory agencies and particular Muslim communities, as opposed to the more productive community-centred approach. There is a significant difference between the two strategies, the latter fostering better community relations that result in varying levels of transparency, communication and empowerment. On the 24th of March, the Bosnian Serb leader Radovan Karadzic was found guilty of genocide during the 1995 Srebrenica massacre and was sentenced to 40 years imprisonment. And moving to the following month, on the 14th of April, I received an email from solicitors of a particular London borough regarding a request for expertise in an extremist case relating to Syria. And I'll read that email and will not highlight which borough it had come from for confidentiality reasons. Dear Dr. Baker, I act on behalf of Children's Services at the London Borough of, and the borough was mentioned, who have instigated care proceedings in a number of cases involving radicalization and extremism of young children within the family. We have been provided your contact details by the Channel Prevent Coordinator at the London Borough of, and it was mentioned. We have had difficulty in locating experts to carry out radicalisation assessments of the parents and children. Would you be able to assist us in this and potentially undertake a radicalisation assessment of the family members and potentially the children? The email went on to ask if I could not assist, could I point them in the direction of experts? And she concluded saying, quote, as you can imagine, the nature of the work is quite pressing and we've exhausted many options to locate good experts with sufficient knowledge. I look forward to hearing from you, close quote. And this was in relation to some family members that had gone to Syria and were subsequently apprehended in Turkey. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, the expertise of Salafis in this field, in this niche, was sought after. However, because of the inward-looking approach of many Salafi communities, expertise was few and far between. And it's hoped that this attitude and approach changes. However, as I'm recording this particular episode in June 2020, there doesn't look like much hope will emanate from the Salafi communities becoming more outward looking and engaging, with the exception of those who are already in mainstream, which I will discuss in further and later episodes. Referring back to 2016 now, and on the 21st of April, President Obama, yet again, I'm referring to him, travelled to the UK with his wife, Michelle, for a 4-day visit. And that was very well received by the country. And this a sporting event that made some history. And on the 2nd of May, we saw Leicester City win the Premier League at odds of 5,000 to 1. The 27th of May saw 3 ships in 3 days sink in the Mediterranean Sea, drowning more than 700 people. And this was a plight that would be played out across social media and mainstream media due to the multitude of people fleeing not only Syria, war-torn Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, but also African countries. On the 12th of June, a gunman claiming allegiance to ISIS opened fire at a gay nightclub in Orlando, Florida, killing 49 people and injuring 53. At the time, this was considered the worst mass shooting in the US. And on the 16th of June, MP Joe Cox was shot and killed in Birstall, West Yorkshire, by Thomas Mair, who would chillingly shout "Britain first" as he murdered her. This was a huge case and brought to the fore the toxicity of the Brexit referendum, which was about to take place a few days later, and the polarization that had taken place among society and the rise of far-right extremism. The 23rd of June saw the referendum take place and the UK voted to leave the European Union, the EU. We saw the following day David Cameron's resignation following the election result, and Theresa May went on to become Prime Minister. Now, as I've just mentioned, the country was very polarised more than ever before in a long time, and British politics has been in turmoil ever since. On the 28th of June, suicide bombings and gun attacks at Istanbul's Ataturk airport killed 42 and wounded more than 200 people. And this brought home a reality and a reminder of extremism. But now we're seeing, from a few days before and on this date, far-right extremism and religious extremism almost running in parallel with each other. And I was to learn that one of my former colleagues from the National Institute of Technology, NIT, in just outside of Jeddah, where I used to work, a number of us used to work there, his wife was killed in that Istanbul attack. They were from Egypt, but were holidaying in Turkey at the time. On the 6th of July, the following month, the Chilcot Report, which was UK's Iraqi war inquiry, released and a report showing that Tony Blair overstated, some would say lied, his case for war in Iraq. And on the 6th of July, I will refer to a few events that took place that caused widespread anger and came to the world's attention again from the US. And that was the killing of Alton Sterling, who was shot dead by Louisiana police in Baton Rouge while being restrained on the ground. This was yet another recorded killing. And on the same day, Philando Castile was shot dead by police in St. Paul, Minnesota, after being pulled over for a broken rear light. He was killed live on Facebook, with his wife filming this and their young child sitting in the back car. The following day, on the 7th of July, a lone gunman shot and killed 5 police officers, wounding others during a protest march against the fatal shootings that had taken place the previous day. It's important to note at this stage the trend to murder black unarmed men and women indiscriminately, and then to witness the offending officers either escape without charge or have charges dropped against them. And as I record this particular episode in 2020, we see that this is an epidemic that continues to run. Hence me introducing the hashtag Black Lives Platter, because there appears to be a continuing open season on Black lives. And it doesn't look like it's going to abate just yet, but we are at a moment in 2020 where the world and those who have previously been unaware due to their privilege are now coming together in solidarity with black communities to say enough is enough. Turning back to the year 2016, on the 25th of August, I wrote an article called Turning a Blind Eye, Tacit Approval of Online Extremism. And this was in relation to news that had emerged about the failure of social media to censor and directly address and tackle the problem of online radicalization and propaganda. And I'll read an excerpt from that particular article on the 25th of August. Quote, "The previous government report on particular social media firms' failure to combat extremist propaganda should come as no surprise. Although the Home Affairs Select Committee is to be acknowledged for highlighting this very serious issue, it is something that was addressed as long ago as 2011. Unfortunately, and as is often the case, small grassroots entities face almost insurmountable David and Goliath moments when challenging larger corporate organisations like Google. During Google's initial summit against violent extremism held in Dublin in 2011, I addressed Eric Smith, the CEO, regarding the nihilistic videos frequently uploaded to promote gang violence. Here's a quote of what I said, and it was reported in a local newspaper. Quote, "Google also came in for criticism at the summit yesterday for failing to take some violent videos off its YouTube website. Dr. Abdulhaq Baker, a former chairman of the Brixton Mosque in London, told more than 200 delegates attending the summit that YouTube videos were being used by gangs in South London to organise gang hits. Smith's response was revealing in as much as he acknowledged his team's lack of requisite grassroots knowledge to identify and address the challenges involved in removing particular content." Close quote. I went on to discuss some of his other responses and their undertaking to deal with this particular issue, but not much was done beyond that. We did provide training to Google and highlight some of the videos that were causing this nihilism, and they took note of some of them. The following day, on the 26th of August, what would become a pivotal moment in American politics, meeting sports, took place and is still reverberating, particularly in this year 2020, 4 years later. And that was none other than Colin Kaepernick taking a knee. He knelt in protest during the US national anthem at San Diego's Qualcomm Stadium, objecting to racial injustice and police brutality in the US. And his comments explaining that were as follows: "I'm not going to stand up to show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of colour. To me, this is bigger than football, and it would be selfish on my part to look the other way. There are bodies in the streets and people getting paid leave and getting away with murder. He also continued and said, he, Trump, always says make America great again. Well, America has never been great for people of colour, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Let's make America great for the first time. End of his quote. Today we are witnessing people across the world taking a knee in solidarity, but also against what we saw with the brutal murder of George Floyd, when an officer kneeled on his neck, suffocating him to death. So again, 4 years on, Colin Kaepernick's action has become a worldwide symbol that is being emulated everywhere, and it's ever more powerful in view of the present circumstances. The following month, on the 20th of September, we saw Black American Keith Lamont Scott shot dead by a black police officer in Charlotte, North Carolina, provoking violent protests in the city. And it's interesting to note here that yet again, another black American was killed, but this time by a black police officer. And some may argue, why was there anger and protests when it was, quote, black on black? And that wasn't within a gang context, which is when black on black crime and violence is usually referred to. However, this black police officer was still part of the institutionalized systemic racism that targeted black people. The following day, some news that is quite poignant in light of what we are discussing around these murders of black individuals. A study highlighted, or 3 studies, highlighted some geneticism and concluded that all non-Africans descended from one migration out of Africa 50 to 80,000 years ago. The same Nature journal also published a genomic study that found Australian Aborigines as having the oldest known civilization on Earth. It's quite interesting when juxtaposing that with the climate of that time and the murders of Alton Sterling, Philando Castile and Keith Lamont Scott, as I've just referred to. On the 22nd of September, the following day, police officer Betty Shelby was charged for shooting dead another unarmed black man, Terrence Crutcher, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And as we are speaking about Tulsa, Oklahoma, we recently saw President Trump visit there for a flopped rally, should I say, in which he wanted to revive his campaign for re-election in November of 2020. Sticking with Donald Trump, on the 8th of November 2016, he was actually elected as the 45th President of the United States. 20 days later, on the 28th of November, I wrote an article entitled, "Is Donald Trump a Salafist?" And I'll refer to some excerpts of that, which should give the listener an idea on why I wrote this article. Quoting from it now: "As the US prepares to inaugurate its 45th president, an important consideration should be given to what social conservatism actually means to Donald Trump. Upon closer examination of his beliefs, some of the core values he subscribes to are not dissimilar to those espoused by other societies and faiths across the globe. However, his previous vow to marginalize an entire faith group because their conservatism does not accord entirely with the US's now appears somewhat contradictory. In fact, could a claim of Trump actually being a closet advocate of Salafism be as legitimate as those that described Obama as a closet Muslim?" Close quote. I went on to compare Salafism with the values declared in the US's Constitution and Declaration of Independence, highlighting that both referenced an illustrious past. Drawing to a conclusion now, on the 1st of December, the UN admitted its peacemakers were responsible for the cholera epidemic in Haiti in 2010 that killed 30,000 people. And on the 16th of that month, we saw the US State Department increase its reward for information leading to the ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi to $25 million. And finally, ending with Donald Trump once again, he was nominated and placed on the front of Time magazine as Person of the Year.